Well, the illusion of the art of the deal has officially evaporated, leaving the global economy on the absolute brink of ruin. And it started with the initial signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. Now, this is a framework not born out of diplomatic strength, but out of absolute desperation. At the G7, Donald Trump made a stunning admission that shocked international allies, stating that the United States and the global economy are fundamentally weak. He confessed that the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve is just a few short weeks away from total depletion, admitting that if a deal wasn't actually struck immediately, the world would descend into absolute bedlam. And so, with the global economy effectively held hostage, American and Iranian officials met in Switzerland to try and hammer out a deal. But just as the negotiations began, the entire framework was literally shattered because Israel launched a massive wave of kinetic strikes across southern Lebanon, executing what regional experts see as a permanent land grab. In immediate retaliation, Iran pulled the plug, declaring the Strait of Hormuz closed once again. Trump's response was characteristically explosive, allegedly issuing a severe threat to eliminate the very Iranian officials who attended the Swiss summit. Stunned by the threat and alleging complete American bad faith, the Iranian delegations packed up, walked out of the meeting, and left Switzerland, keeping the world's most critical energy choke point tightly shut. Now, the entire peace process is entirely moot. Israel, fully aware of how tenuous the situation is, continues its relentless bombardment and territorial expansion into Lebanon. They know that a paper treaty between Washington and Tehran cannot stop their military machine. The reality of the situation is clear. Any future peace deal is completely dead unless the United States forces Israel to heal. But that requires a tool Washington has historically refused to use, completely pulling US financial and military support from Israel. Remarkably, that is exactly the political runway that Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance are currently building. For weeks, the administration has grown increasingly acrimonious towards Jerusalem, with both leaders becoming highly critical of Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Vance recently delivered a brutal public warning to the Israeli cabinet, telling them to wake up and smell the reality, and bluntly reminding them that 2/3 of their defense weapons are built by American hands and paid for by American taxpayers. Trump is actively positioning himself politically to do the unthinkable, cut off the pipeline of weapons and cash to force Israel into compliance. But the damage to Trump's legacy is already done. Instead of a masterclass in diplomacy, his legacy is shaping up to be global economic ruin and the potential starvation of millions in the future as energy, LNG, and fertilizer grids collapse. He has trapped the United States in a war it cannot get out of, and inadvertently, he has transformed Iran into a far stronger, hyper-wealthy regional superpower. So, what is the next move here? What is the next play? How is this resolved? The GCC monarchies are staring down total economic failure if they cannot resume exports. Asia is starving for oil and LNG. The world desperately needs its fertilizer. Something has to give, either peacefully or violently. A breaking point is inevitable. To see how this ends, we have to look at the three potential scenarios playing out behind the scenes, ranked from least likely to most likely. The first and least likely scenario is an unconditional diplomatic surrender. In this reality, the Israeli caretaker government suddenly halts its strikes, abandons its land grab in Lebanon, and submits to Washington's peace terms without the US having to freeze a single asset. Iran opens the strait, and the global economy seamlessly restores the status quo. Given the current existential survival loops driving the political establishment in Jerusalem, this is highly improbable. The second moderately likely scenario is a violent maritime escalation. If Trump refuses to cut off Israel, the US and a fractured coalition of allies will be forced to deploy direct conventional naval power to forcefully open the Strait of Hormuz. This transforms the Persian Gulf into a permanent, high-intensity combat zone. Tankers would have to be escorted through a hail of anti-ship ballistic missiles and sea mines, forcing GCC economies into a permanent command state footing, while global supply chains accept a crushing, permanent inflationary tax. The third and most likely scenario is a brutal transactional recalibration. Trump follows through on his political signaling and officially freezes US military aid and financial funding to Israel. Stripped of its American shield and facing absolute diplomatic isolation, Jerusalem is forced to halt its northern offensive. This allows a heavily leveraged Iran to dictate the terms of a new multipolar energy clearing system in Switzerland. The global economy will endure severe structural localized recessions and food shocks in the short term, but a forced transactional peace is ultimately pounded out, proving that the global economy is no longer run by automatic deference, but by raw, cold survival. I also saw Mr. Global predict that somebody, somewhere, will make a rather large financial contribution to Iran in order to get them back to the table and open the Strait of Hormuz. So we'll see if that prediction holds any water, but only time will tell. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do any of these options seem likely, or do you think of a different option that might potentially happen in this ongoing crisis? All right, that's it for today. My name is Jonathan Paulette. This is Practical Energy Insights. If you found some value, please do like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.
Now watch this dry.